So I wanted to put together a list of 11 different common budgeting mistakes to avoid when you go on your first solo traveling adventure, okay? Hi guys, my name is Natalie and I just got back from a 2-month solo backpacking trip throughout Europe and I saw over 15 countries. It was absolutely crazy and I had such a fun time. Let's get into the first budget mistake. The first mistake to avoid is converting your currency over to the local currency the minute you land in a new country. Just so you know, all of the airports, they are going to inflate the rate of conversion to the local currency, okay? Basically, they're just trying to make a fast dollar or whatever the currency is, trying to rip off all the tourists that are like freaking out about their first international trip and are trying to make money off of them. They're like, hey, we're open. We'll give you like the currency that you need. Here you go. And they're trying to give you a peace of mind. But in reality, you're losing money because you can exchange your currency over for the local currency anywhere. You can get in a taxi, you can get to your hotel, you can get to where you need to be by just using your phone, by using tap to pay or using apps to download to basically call a taxi, okay? Just remember, convert your currency over to the local currency at an ATM that is not near the airport, okay? Or that is not in a touristy area because otherwise you will 100% be getting ripped off. And this leads me into my next budgeting mistake to absolutely avoid, which is avoiding those ATM fees, those transaction fees. This was something that I was not aware of before I went on my Europe trip, but I'm so glad that I signed up for my Charles Schwab debit card. So I already had a checking account with Charles Schwab and all I had to do was call them up and they sent me a debit card because I never had one, which don't ask why. But basically that card is a godsend. You can go to any ATM, it doesn't matter where you are in any country, and whatever the fees are for pulling out cash using your Charles Schwab card, they will actually reimburse you at the end of the month. The fees that you are paying at the ATM, you will always get reimbursed by Charles Schwab. That is huge because if you use any other card, you're going to be paying those ATM fees up front and you don't get reimbursed. If you're trying to save money and you're trying to budget accordingly for your trip, don't make that mistake. Just get the Charles Schwab debit card and you'll be good to go. Like there's no point to just throw your money away for no reason. So that was a godsend. And also the customer service is top tier. Okay. So this isn't sponsored. I'm just saying like, I love that card so much. It's really helpful for international travel. Okay. My next common budgeting mistake to avoid is dining at touristy restaurants when you are in Italy or any like popular destination. I bring this up for Italy, especially because that is where I fell for the trap so many times. Like sometimes it's not so obvious. Let's start from the beginning. Touristy dining spot or restaurant will always have pictures of the food on their menu or like a huge sign right outside their restaurant or storefront, okay? Or there will be people outside being like, come on in, like welcome, like we have amazing food, we have pasta, we have carbonara, do you want to come on in? Like it's gonna be so weird. You're gonna be like, oh, that's so nice, like finally people speak English and they're inviting. No, that's a tourist trap. They're trying to get you in because every single item on their menu, number one, is probably trash because it's touristy stuff. Like they're just making food to make money and turn over as many people as possible to make money. Number two, all of the items on the menu are going to be very expensive, okay? So if you're trying to get the authentic Italian experience, I saw this a lot in Italy, but if you're trying to get the authentic Italian experience, you probably want authentic food and you probably don't want to drop a bag on every single meal and be like, what the hell is going on? The food isn't even that good. The food is good, you're just going to the wrong places. So the mistake to avoid is do not go to the touristy places. Travel a little bit outside of the touristy places. Do your research in advance before you go to a place and make sure it's not a touristy place. Look at the pictures of like the people's reviews and see if the menu has pictures of the food on it. Then you'll know 100% if it's a touristy spot or not. And also all of the travel gurus and influencers, they are showing you touristy places as well. So keep that in mind. Like when you go on YouTube and you watch other travel influencers, they are going to touristy places because they are probably getting paid by the restaurant to show the food, okay? Or they're just going to popular places and don't really care about finding authentic places. So if you want to find the authentic places, watch my videos because I'm a foodie and that's what I do. And if I go to a touristy place, I will let you know in advance. So keep that in mind. The next common budgeting mistake to avoid is traveling during peak season. This is one that I knew I was walking into 100% when I booked my Europe trip in the middle of summer. Because if you didn't know, summer is definitely peak season for anywhere in Europe, and honestly, like just anywhere in general. It's hot outside, people are off from school, people take off from work. It's just like a good time to travel. So That's why everything is super expensive. Supply and demand, baby. What I would recommend doing if you want to save money and not make the mistake that I did, but I did it consciously, is go when it is probably cold outside, or go to Google Flights and check the trends for flight prices and see when they're super cheap, because that's probably when it's off season. And then everything in that destination will also be cheap. Like the food will be cheap, accommodations will be cheap, and then some of the touristy places will be free. The Cinque Terre in Italy, I think it's free during off season, but during peak season, which is when I went, they literally make you pay to walk the Cinque Terre. Just keep that in mind. Like there's a lot of good privileges that you can get if you go during off season. The next common budgeting mistake to avoid is buying bottled water in countries that have some of the cleanest water in the world. I made this mistake a couple of times, and I had my Airbnb host like yell at me because I bought plastic water bottles, and they're like, why would you do that? Like, our water from the sink is so clean. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Just Google, like, is it safe to drink fountain water or sink water in XYZ country? And then you can save money, because sometimes, I know in Switzerland, it can get expensive if you buy a ton of water bottles all the time. Just keep that in mind, and know some places in Europe are going to have like the freshest, cleanest, most amazingly tasting, that's not a word, water ever. Okay, the next common budgeting mistake is under budgeting to make yourself feel good. If you're planning your trip and you have that Excel spreadsheet that I created for you in this video, if you want to go check that video out and get that Excel spreadsheet, and you're looking at the total number, like, okay, I'm gonna spend $1,000 on this like 2-month trip and it's gonna be amazing, I'm gonna budget everything, and yeah, that's the biggest mistake you can make, because in reality, something bad might happen. And I don't want to tell you that, but I also don't want something bad happening. You don't have the money for it. And also, like, there could be a food opportunity that you run into, like, dang, I really want to go to this restaurant and spend a little bit extra money because like this entree looks sick. Like, I need to try this right now. Or just for your safety, like something might pop up and like you need to spend a little bit extra money on an Uber, or just whatever it is. You never know what will happen. So the mistake is not budgeting a little bit extra for the emergency fund. Okay. I think I dropped an extra like 1.5K as an extra emergency fund on top of my budget that I had for Europe. And honestly, you probably under budgeted, and you're going to spend more than you think, because you're like, oh, I'm not going to spend that much, but like you probably will. And if you don't, that's great, but it's better to over budget. Okay, then the next common budgeting mistake to avoid is overpaying for Airbnb experiences in the common touristy spots. I wanted to pepper in different experiences throughout my day, just so I wouldn't just be eating food and walking around every day. I wanted like to surf, I wanted to go skydiving, I wanted to do all these fun things, and I wanted to go paragliding. I saw a really cool experience in Switzerland, and the video paragliding over the Swiss Alps looked amazing. I'm like, I need to do that. Okay. And I think it was about $300. And I'm just like, all right, like whatever, it's fine. Because they record the whole thing. Like I was like, okay, this is worth it. Let's go. Then I was searching a couple days later after I already bought the tickets, paragliding. I noticed in Lagos, Portugal, they also had a paragliding experience, and it was less than $80, I think. Like, you can go to Switzerland and drop $300. Granted, everything is inflated in Switzerland. That's just the way it is. You could drop $300 on a paragliding experience in Switzerland, or like $80 on the same thing in another country. If you want to save money and you're on a budget, check all the countries that you're going to be traveling to, or if you plan to go to another country like next year or something, just save that experience for the cheaper country if you're trying to save money. But if you want to do it for the experience and you want to go over the Swiss Alps, then like obviously that would just be a Switzerland experience. So, okay, my next common budgeting mistake to avoid is taking an Uber or taxi instead of the public transit. So there were so many countries that I visited where I just called an Uber because I'm like, oh, I'm either lazy or I didn't really know how to use the public transportation. And so I ended up dropping like $20 or $30 on a ride when I could have dropped like $2 or less on public transportation. If you're in Milan or something and you buy a taxi, it's like, why? Because there's so many buses that you can jump on. There's a subway system that's super efficient as well, and everything is incredibly cheap, okay? Same with Budapest. I remember like there was a bus you could literally jump on, and there's no one like really checking tickets too, so you can technically kind of get on for free. Don't do that, but if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. It might take a little bit extra time to get there, so you're investing some of your time. If you want to save money, then that's a great option for you. I hit 15 countries in 2 months, so I had limited time, and time was a more valuable asset to me than money. That is what I ended up doing. My next common budgeting mistake to avoid is dining out for every meal instead of going to the grocery store. When you first get to a new country or a new destination, it's really exciting to just go to every restaurant, go out for brunch, go get your coffee everywhere. Like, it's super exciting. Trust me, like, I'm a foodie, I get it. But if you're not trying to break the bank, then check out the grocery stores, because you can still get the full experience. You can still get the hotel and explore and walk around and do your thing. If you stop at the grocery store and just make some of your meals or bring that food to go, like ready to go meals at the grocery store, you're gonna save so much money. Sometimes it's like even better at the grocery store. Like, Italian grocery stores and Swiss grocery stores are next level. I could literally go to those grocery stores on a day-to-day basis and live a very happy life, okay? Which is what I did when I was there. Like, I went every day and I loved it. That was one thing I liked about European culture. Like, you don't buy food for the entire week and just go absolutely insane at the grocery store. You get food for that day or that night, or just like, 2 days. You eat everything and then you go back. And I like that. It's just like, it's slow living. That's what it's all about. But also, I am an advocate of checking out, the local restaurants and cafes. So do a blend of both. That's what I like to do. My next common budgeting mistake to avoid is tipping a lot in Italy. Understand the tipping culture for the country you were going to. In Italy, you don't tip like 15% for your service if you're at like a sit-down restaurant, okay? Like, in the US, you tip 15% or more. In Italy, it's not like that. I remember one time in Italy, I tipped my server 20 euros. And he was he's like, oh my God, thank you. Like, you're amazing. He all of a sudden spoke English. It was crazy. He did a good job, but it was so much money that I gave him as a tip. That's not normal or common. So if you're trying to save money, you don't need to tip that much. Just understand the culture of the place that you're going to. Don't make the mistake I did. I made that guy's day, I guess, and I'm happy about that. Or my last common budgeting mistake to avoid is not buying travel insurance for cancellations. You have two options. You can either get travel insurance for your entire trip, which is what I did. I used World Nomads, or you can get travel insurance for each thing that you purchase. For example, if you buy a plane ticket, you can buy flight insurance. It's usually an option right before you buy. Or if you get a hotel or an Airbnb, there's normally a combination insurance that is included. Like, if you do Airbnb, I think it's called Airbnb Air Cover. That's what it's called. I would recommend picking that, because if anything goes wrong, you're not totally out of pocket like the full amount of money that you dropped. Instead, you're only out of pocket the like $7 or $10 or $20 or whatever that you spent on the insurance. It seems like, well, I don't want to spend a little bit extra. Well, it will be worth it if you end up having to cancel your trip for like a random reason. It's better to be safe than sorry. That's like always my mindset. And that happened to me. Like, when I was in Europe, I had to cancel my whole trip to Greece because Greece was on fire. Athens was on fire. My Airbnb was like right outside the fire zone. I had to cancel the trip, and I didn't get my money back for a lot of things, which is frustrating, but I did get travel insurance, so I'm still working through that process. It takes forever, but it's good to have it just as a backup. So those are all of the common budgeting mistakes that you should avoid when you go on your first solo traveling trip throughout Europe or even in America, but these are more relevant for Europe. If you want any other videos about solo traveling or just traveling to Europe in general, let me know in the comments down below, and let me know if you've ever made any of these mistakes as well in the comments down below, because it's annoying when it happens, but after you can save money. So that is it for today's video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.